This is Greg Fangle. Today is March 31st, 2012. I'm with George Hovland at his house in Duluth. Hovland. Yeah, he's a Norwegian. We're going to talk about history and skiing and whatever comes to mind. George owns Snowflake Nordic in Duluth, and that's a... How many kilometers do you have in Duluth, George?
Well, about 15 is all.
15K, and he's got a real nice chalet there where everybody comes. Well, George, how did you actually get started in skiing, like when you were younger? Where did you grow up?
I grew up about 2 blocks away from here. House was, if you know, at the front porch, you could look up the hill through the trees and see the ski jump.
And the ski jump was at, what's the name?
Chester Park.
Chester Park.
Yeah.
And some people call that Chester Bowl?
Well, Chester Bowl is the area around where the chalet is and so forth. It's kind of a big bowl that was formed by the river that came down there for years. That's all. Yeah.
So you grew up right in there, and how'd you get started skiing then?
I didn't start. I got started late. I was born in 1926, but I didn't start skiing until 1928. I was 2 years old, and my father or mother had a little pair of skis. And I remember after Christmas, my father took the Christmas tree out in our side yard, piled some snow on it, and put me on top of it. So I went down. It was about a 2-foot hill, so to speak. And there's a picture someplace about that. I don't know.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know Duluth has a lot of hills. It's a lot of hills next to Lake Superior, so there's quite an elevation change here. And I know Chester Park's got to be about 1,000 feet above Lake Superior, isn't it?
It's only about 700 or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Snowflake is 780, and that's why we get snow up there when there's no snow down here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you started when you were a young kid, and you stayed with it all your childhood?
That's what we did.
Yeah.
I mean, summer it was baseball and all the rest of the things, but living right here in Chester Park, the ski jumping was just something that we did.
So you started out ski jumping?
Yeah.
How about cross country? Did you do any of that too? I know back then skiing was skiing, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. It was just skiing, but the Norwegians, it started sometime around I don't know exactly when Pete Fosshead and Eric Judin came from Norway, but when we were just little kids, they were around and they were the heroes, and there was quite a contingent of ski jumpers and cross country skiers, and they used to have a trail that started started in Chester Park there, and went up right through what is now a residential area and St. Scholastica. The trail went way around that, and actually another trail that they call the 12-mile trail started in Chester Park, went right across where UMD is now, and into a place called Hartley Field. And anyhow, it's all residential area now, except that Hartley area.
St. Scholastica, I know, is one of the major colleges up here, and UMD is the University of Minnesota, Duluth.
Yes, right.
And they're pretty close by here. Yeah. Where did you get your skis when you were young like that? Did the Norwegians bring them over, or did you actually have a place to buy them in town here?
Well, for myself, I don't know where my father or mother had the pair of skis. They weren't the right size, and they weren't, and the tips had flattened out. And I remember my mother soaking the tips in a hot bathtub for a while, and then kind of try to get the tips to the first skis that I was on. But then there used to be a Hanson Hardware used to sell skis, and they sold Northlands and Greg's.
Sure.
And but that was when, I don't know where I got the skis, honestly.
Yeah, Hanson Hardware in Duluth.
Yeah, that was in the West End.
And Northland skis and Greg skis, they were made in St. Paul, Minnesota, just about 150 miles south of here.
Right.
Yeah, I know back then a lot of hardware stores sold skis.
They knew nothing about skis, but they
Right.
sold them. Yeah.
Right.
And then, I don't know where I got the first real pair of competitive skis, so to speak.
Yeah.
Just happened to have them. And I remember the first skis were 6-footers, and we used them for cross country, and we used them for jumping. Same skis.
Yeah. Oh, you back then you had just a single loop of leather on it. Is that right? Or what kind of binding was it?
Well, that's interesting. The toe strap was one thing, and then they had kind of a kick-in, what we call bear traps, a toe plate where the ski would go in, and I can remember there was a very famous Norwegian toe-leaf hog, and we said hog, and what we did was we took car tire inner tubes and cut them about an inch wide, and if you looped it over your toe and around the heel, it would push your boot. If you're familiar with these,
yes,
Greg,
I'm familiar with those.
Yeah, and when we get on the little jump over there, when we first started jumping, the older kids would say, "No Firestone hogs." Firestone for the rubber, and hog went to hog, and so forth, because your skis would wobble. You couldn't go very straight with them.
So the other kids didn't like you using them? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the big kids would say, "No Firestone hogs," and. Where are we going with this?
No, we're just talking about the bindings.
Yeah.
I know some of the old bindings, they had the metal toe iron with a strap.
Correct.
But they also had like a leather clamp on.
That went around the back.
Right. So if you didn't have the leather, you used the
irons, toe irons.
The inner tube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I know you were in the 1952 Olympics. How did you get started with that? I mean, you were skiing here at Chester Bowl, right? And then how did you expand from the neighborhood park into getting into the Olympics? How did that work for you?
Well, that was a long. I can't say that 10 years before the Olympic trials that I had in mind to try to make the Olympic team or something.
Uh-huh.
It was just that we all skied, and at the time, I was at the University of Minnesota, and we had a ski club down there. And we all competed. We competed against all the other Minnesota colleges, and we'd go over Michigan Tech and down into Wisconsin and so forth. And I don't. All of a sudden, the Olympic trials came up, and it wasn't something that 10 years before I'd planned or something.
Right.
It's just that, and you've interviewed John Burton.
Not yet. I need to get a hold of him.
Yeah.
I know John Burton was in the 1952 Olympics as well, and he lives in Minneapolis.
Yeah, he lives in Edina, Minnetonka, Deep Haven. Anyhow, and they were a bunch of Norm Oakvik at the same time was trying out for the team. But I think it was 2 years before that they were the FIS, what we just refer to as the FIS, is the alternate 2 years World Championships, and they had the trials up here in Duluth for combined, and
that would be for Nordic combined, which is a combination of ski jumping and cross country, right?
And I just missed making that team, and it just sort of naturally followed that 2 years later when the trials came. We went. As a matter of fact, you know Jack Pauly. Do
I don't know him.
he was pretty close to Norm
Okay.
at the time, and Jack was anyhow. Bob Sanderson.
I've heard the name, but I don't know.
We got in a car and drove out to Rumford, Maine for the trials, and I was lucky enough to make it. And one of my teammates, John Caldwell.
I know John. He's a very famous East Coast skier. He's written books. And
right.
His family is incredible. Sarah Caldwell right now coaches the SMS Stratton Mountain School, and you see Caldwell names in skiing every day.
Just incredible.
Yeah.
We correspond a lot, and he wrote a book on cross country skiing.
Yes.
Do you know about that?
Yes. I think it was in the '60s he wrote the first book.
Yeah. Caldwell on cross country.
Yep.
And he sold 50,000 copies. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know the quantity, but I know that was kind of the Bible of skiing back at that time.
And some of the stuff that he was talking about was correct. I mean, I heckle him a lot.
Yeah.
Anyhow, as he said, he was also a Nordic combined skier. And we joke with each other about it. We picked the discipline that nobody else could really excel in. It was the easiest. We weren't good enough for special jumping. We weren't good enough for anyhow.
What town does John live in out there right now?
Putney, Vermont.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking, I think you said you went to the University of Minnesota Duluth?
No. In Minneapolis.
Oh, in Minneapolis. Okay. Yeah. I'm guessing, was that before the Olympic trials? Probably, huh?
Yeah, that was in 1948 and 49.
Okay.
And the trials were in 51.
What would you do after you graduate from college then?
Went skiing.
No, but I mean, like for a career.
Oh. Came back to town and back here and messed around with a lot of things, but started a ski shop and first one around, and also started a small cross-country ski, or a small alpine area up by St. Scholastica, and so between the two it was kind of busy, and then Montauk started, and the guy who was managing it, you remember Montauk?
Yeah, I remember the name.
Yeah,
right.
It's still operating now. Anyhow, that was the only alpine area around, and Tony Wise, from Telmark, and his partners wanted to sell it. So the guy who was managing it was a local, and he came to me when I had my ski shop, and he said, they want to sell, we can buy Montauk. And so we kind of argued about, or discussed the price. He said, well, they want $1,000 up front. And I said, well, I don't know if I can come up with $1,000. No, that's total. We each have to come in with $500. So we bought Montauk for $500.
Now that was Tony Wise owned it. You said
Tony Wise and an attorney and a newspaper guy from Superior. Anyhow,
did they own? Was that before Telemark then?
No, that was during the early days.
Okay. So then you bought.
Wise got those two guys to come in with the money, and they built the place.
Okay. Yeah. So then you and another guy bought Montauk.
Yeah. And so he ran it, and I sort of promoted it through the shop and so forth. And the next year, he wanted out, and he wanted to buy me out. And it was kind of interesting because and I can talk about this freely now because he's dead. We each had come in with $500, so he said, "Here's a check for $500." I said, "That's not the way it works." So, anyhow, we finally got together on that.
What was the name of your ski shop back then?
The ski shop.
Oh, the ski shop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty imaginative. And then, anyhow, it was 1950, 51. That was when the trials were, and then the games were in 52, and I came back and ran the shop, and then the 2 years later was the World Championships, and what we called the FIS team. And so I thought, well, I might as well try to make that team. It was only 2 men. It was a 2-man team. So I and another guy from out east were the team. We went to Sweden and Finland and so forth. Anyhow, so I made that team too. What was the question?
Well, so I'm just looking at your career. Other than so that was in the mid-50s. I mean, did you continue to own the ski shop then after that?
No, I took in a partner and then sold to him. So that shop was.
How about Montauk? When I know you don't own it now, but when did you get rid of that?
Well, let's see. I don't know exactly it had to be about 1953 or something like that I was a partner.
Sure.
And then the next year.
Oh, they bought you out. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So how about later in the 50s and 60s?
Well, during that time, I mean, there was cross-country races. We'd go to cross-country races. There were jumping meets. We'd go to that. And I skied a lot of alpine. And Lucent was going, and we were up there all the time skiing. And
was that your career, more or less, or did you actually have a job to generate income too during that time?
Well, between the ski shop and I don't know if anything made any money. Honestly, I am a lousy businessman. I'm not a good businessman. People ask me about Snowflake.
Yeah.
I suppose you had a business plan and went to the bank. No, what's a business plan?
Yeah. When did you buy Snowflake, or when did you create Snowflake, I should say?
Well, I started designing and building homes, and there was about 180 acres of land available. It looked like it would be great for development because I was buying land all over the place and building homes and things. And
so you were more or less a developer then. You'd buy the land and design homes and sell them, and probably hire out all the building to a contractor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was the contractor, but I'd hire the subs and put it all together. And, And I built hundreds of homes, and I had some artistic ability, and anyhow. So
that's probably why you're not a good businessman. You're more artistic.
Is that autistic or artistic? And then anyhow, because of the involvement in skiing, every weekend it was a race of some sort, some kind of competition. And how did you lead us into this?
Well, we were just talking about your career and what you were doing, and kind of progression. You talked about being a developer, and then you somehow
went on for a number of years, and
then at some point you built the chalet there at Snowflake. And
I found out that what I wanted to do was I designed first of all, Duluth really needed a real ski alpine area. And for about 10 years, I mean, I scoured the land. I was pretty good at finding land that was for sale and tax forfeit and so forth. This is how I accumulated a lot of land in the process. I'm thinking about where could we have an alpine area, because unfortunately the founders of Duluth built the town right on what would have been the best alpine area, right down the center of town.
Mm-hmm.
And you're supposed to chuckle about that. And so anyhow, I kept scouring the records, and I found this vast area out west that it was dotted with individual owners with a lot of tax forfeit land. And so I did the original kind of layout about how it could be the vertical drop and all the rest of the business. I mean, it just looked like perfect. So I went to a guy who was politically connected and a good businessman in town here, and I said, this could really be big. So he put a group together with the city and so forth, and they acquired the land that I could not have. Indian Head, I was close to the people who were running that at the time.
And Indian Head is in the UP of Michigan.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I talked to one of the principals there, and I said, this really looks like this could really be a good ski area. He says, if you can put it together, he says, I can get the money, no question about it. But the problem was that all the acreage was dotted with individual owners, and if they didn't want to sell, you're out of business. And a lot of the property was acquired by the city through eminent domain and so forth. Anyhow, so that was put together. So basically, I'm the father of Spirit Mountain.
And Spirit Mountain's a current downhill area on the west end of town, and it's real popular, I know, with people in the cities and people up here too. Only
a couple hours from the cities. And
I also heard you designed the cross-country trails there.
Yeah. And designed those and walked with the dozer around the whole thing, got it, and then they weren't doing much with it. And I tried for 10 straight years through different directors to buy the place. Not buy it, but give me a 5 or 10 year lease. I'll build a chalet and I'll do it the way it should have been done. And anyhow, it was rejected. And I and another guy who was really interested in cross country said, let's give it one more try. So we assembled about 50 guys just overnight who were really interested in cross-country skiing, and we got the director, who I was relatively close to. Anyhow, they rejected it again. So one of these avid fans, said, well, why don't you build a cross-country center on that land that you own on the Rice Lake Road? And that's how Snowflake started.
So you couldn't do anything at Spirit Mountain, you did it yourself.
Yeah. And so anyhow, the rest is history as far as Snowflake is concerned.
Yeah.
I kept building houses and things, and in order to finance the place. And where were we?
Well, we're just talking about Snowflake, and now let's see. When do you think Snowflake started? When
it was? Let's see. Well, I think it's 22 years now.
Okay.
Backtrack that.
Sure.
Something like that.
So I know I've seen that it's for sale right now.
It's been for sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any takers at all, or anybody interested?
Lots of interest. Crazy interest. It's just. But like I joke, I've had several who were, let's say, very interested and potentially capable, because we can offer pretty good terms. And about a year ago, we were only a couple 100,000 short, and that didn't put together. And I continue to have interest. A guy was coming up this weekend from the cities to talk about it. But I don't think he's got the funds.
We've been talking to George Hovland about his career of skiing, his life in Duluth, how he started Spirit Mountain downhill ski area and cross country, how he started Snowflake Nordic, which is one of the premier cross country ski areas in the Duluth area and also in the region. During our conversation, George also talked about a few other adventures that he was involved with, and now we're going to talk about some of those. Hey, George, in the past you told me about a ski outing that you did from Grand Marais to Duluth. Tell me about that.
I'm trying to remember who originally conceived this ridiculous, and it was probably Rick Scott, because he's always got wild ideas. You know, he's kind of nuts as far as skiing is concerned, and he's been a hell of a good skier for years. But anyhow, so we decided that we would do it, and the day before we were scheduled to leave, John Stevenson, a local doc over there, one of our skiing friends, decided he wanted to go too. So everybody was charged with a certain responsibility. I would arrange for the transportation. My wife would drive us up there and pick us up if we had to abandon the project and so forth. And so somebody was supposed to make pemmican for us because we heard that was good. And anyhow, we finally got in the car the morning of the start of the trip up north, and we got to Two Harbors, and whoever was supposed to make the pemmican had left it on his kitchen table, so we didn't have anything to eat except candy bars and things.
So backing up here, how many people was
three
it?
of us.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you, Rick, and
And John Stevenson.
John, okay.
Yeah. And we just knew that Rick is very familiar with the North Shore. And so we decided that we would get on in Grand Marais and then ski down to a such and such point. And he had it all worked out, because if we get to this road, we can go down, then we can stay at this one of the lodges there. And anyhow, we started out in the morning, and he worked it out with my wife. Rick did. He says, we'll meet you, I don't know when, but it should take us about such and such a time, and we'll ski down and you park in this parking lot. Well, we skied all day.
Oh, you were skiing on the Arrowhead Trail, which is the snowmobile trail, right?
I don't know. It really wasn't much of a trail. There were no tracks or anything like that.
Yeah.
And there were some bare spots and so forth. Anyhow, and it was starting to get dark. This is in midwinter. And I was getting kind of apprehensive because I couldn't trust Rick, really, because he does some kind of weird things. And so finally, I said, we got to get down towards the highway sooner or later, and we're depending on you, Rick, to get us there. It's in the gloom of evening. There's no bright sun, no bright moon, and here we are clumping along. Well, anyhow, he lucked out. He went down the right driveway. My wife was there with the car. We get picked up. And anyhow, it took us 3 days, I guess, to do it.
And that's got to be, 150 miles or 120?
No, I think it's Lutsen is 90 miles from Duluth.
Oh, right, okay.
And so it's another, 10, 15 from there.
Right, so it's a little over 100 miles.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what year was that? Do you remember?
I don't know. Rick will know.
Okay.
He writes down all these unimportant things, and the crazy thing was that two really kind of funny things. First of all, we didn't properly carry food. And I remember we made one of those days, we skied half the day on Hershey Candy Kisses, and those things. And then I had this new Rossignol ski that Bill Koch had designed, where the boot had a slot down through the center, so that you had all kinds of stability. I don't know if you, anyhow, and it was a crazy binding that they had, and we stopped to have a candy kiss, and I looked down, and the thing had fallen apart. It was kind of scary. So this Doc Stevenson, he pulled out his backpack, he sutured the thing together. So anyhow, we made it. Anyhow.
That sounds like an interesting story.
It was.
So basically, you went about 50K or 30 miles or so each day.
Roughly, yeah.
To get there in three days.
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me, too, of the story you told me about Pete Folside skiing from Duluth to St. Paul for the Winter Carnival.
Yeah.
That's about 150 miles.
Yep. No trail.
No trail.
Very little snow.
Skied on the side of the roads and in the ditches.
Yep. Did I tell you about his skis?
I think you did. Tell me again.
Well, old Northland skis, they were all hickory, which is pretty tough wood. They had deep grooves, or one groove, of course, down the center. And he had skied on such rough, on pavement and so forth at that time, that in about a foot under the foot plate, maybe a little more than 12 inches, no groove was left. They had worn down the sides on blacktop that they skied on and so forth. Anyhow, the prize was $1,200 in merchandise from Schoeneman's department store in St. Paul.
Mm-hmm.
He never got one dime. And but he was such a happy guy, such a positive, And I used to talk to him about that, and he said, yeah, never got a penny from the go on and on.
Schoeneman's was a predecessor to Dayton's, because it was
same building, I think. Yeah.
Dayton's, Schoeneman's. In fact, my grandpa used to work for Schoeneman's.
Is that right?
In the office, yeah.
And Otto Hollis was there.
Yeah.
You remember him?
No.
Ask Rick about him, because he was I don't know if he was German or Austrian, but he ran ski schools and really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's a great story, George. Thanks. I've been talking to George Hovland from Duluth, Minnesota. George shared some of the highlights of his life, including making the 1952 Winter Olympics, being a developer in Duluth, buying and selling land and building houses, and also developing the Spirit Mountain ski area and Snowflake Nordic. We want to thank George for his time, and we hope all of you remember George and what he's done for the city of Duluth and the cross-country ski community.